Hello, hello, hello! Welcome back to Mad Editor Laboratories for day 3. All right. Hello. Haley's already in. Hello, Haley. Hello. All right. What are people working on today? I am still going strong. I believe I am on chapter 23. Let's see. Yep. Nope. No. Chapter 22 because I decided to blend 2 chapters together. So technically I'm on chapter 23 in terms of like the scenes I'm pulling from, but it's chapter 22 according to the current draft too, because I blended them because there were 2 shorter chapters, so I just blended them together. All right. I'm pretty pleased with the progress so far. It probably doesn't seem like a lot to other people, but for me, I'm getting triple what I usually get done, so it's been working. All right. How are you doing, Haley? Are you getting a lot of stuff packed? How's that going? I hope it's going well. All right, today, I've got my script here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Today's subject is chaotic good characters. Chaotic good is one of those characters that when it's done well, it can be really interesting. But I think, at least for me, it's hard. If you ask me to sit down and describe to you what chaotic good is with nothing else, like I couldn't use examples. I had to describe it as an abstract concept. I don't think I'd be able to do it great. I think the closest I could get is the concept that I understand it is that it's a character who wants to do good and do what is ethically correct. However, they don't necessarily believe that laws fall in that. And more often than not, they believe that a lot of laws, like lawful good, is the incorrect way to do that. They don't believe the laws are correct. So they go completely outside of the law. I've seen some people say that like Batman is supposed to be, but I think Batman is kind of like I'm not sure if Batman actually qualifies because Batman is revenge based. So I'm not sure. You could probably argue for lots of different orientations for Batman. What I think is like a little clearer of an example would be Robin Hood, V for Vendetta, Han Solo, Wesley from Princess Bride. Those are a couple characters that I feel like more cleanly fit into the chaotic good. Like especially Wesley from Princess Bride. I think he's a really great example because he's a pirate. He steals from people. But at the same time, he doesn't necessarily go around willy-nilly killing just to kill either. Like he has a reason for it, and he does genuinely try to do the right thing, but he is definitely doing it outside of the law, that's for sure. Haley, I am 2/3 done with packing my office supplies, so I'm going to try to finish that tonight. Awesome! Yeah, you should be leaving really soon, shouldn't you? I feel like you're supposed to leave in like a day or 2. Clothes are almost done, just have the closet left. Tomorrow will be the rest of clothes, decorations, art. Tomorrow's a big one then. I feel like clothing is one of those things that you think it'll be really easy to pack, and then it takes you way longer than anticipated. I don't know. I just feel like that's always something I underestimated back when I was in college. But yeah, the reason I want to kind of talk about this is I feel like maybe my main character ends up falling into this category at the later part of the book. The part of the book I'm in right now, that I'm editing right now, I feel like they fall into this category. But it's not something that they initially start out as. It's something they kind of end up with. So they initially start out more lawful good, but then as they go on, they're like, oh, not only is this system not benefiting me, but it's actually actively harming me and harming others and silencing people. I'm going to have to go against it to do what I believe is right. So I feel like my main character is falling into this category at the later part of the book. But what about you guys? Have you, do you have any characters you think would qualify for lawful good? I leave on Sunday. Oh, okay. So you got a couple days left. You got a couple days. That's good. I've donated a lot and had to throw out a ton of pens. Office is taking the longest. Yeah. Well, you should declutter while you're at it. And I think the decluttering is the thing that slows you down the most. Because you have to think about, do I really need this? Is this actually required? Or is it something that I can just chuck? I think a character turning into a different system is a cool way to show character arc. Yeah. I'm at a point where my main character is having to kind of think about what they truly believe versus whether or not their actions are actually working alongside that belief, instead of, because I feel like initially my main character is kind of just struggling just to get by and survive, and it's just like one job after another just to like reach this survival point. And so because they're so fixated on just kind of getting by and surviving and scraping by, they haven't really thought, is this actually beneficial to anyone? Is this actually helping anyone? Am I actually like going about this the best way possible? And the reality is they definitely are not. In fact, they messed up a lot. And they made a lot of choices out of pride more than anything, pride and their stubborn nature, that have actually caused more harm than if they had just reached out for help. But also the very systems they were leaning on in order to survive and meet that status quo are the very systems that are trying to kill them now. So they have to completely go against those systems that they were originally relying on. It definitely is thinking about their alignments and their allies and what they consider to be an ally, and reconsidering that. Thinking about things more deeply than is fun, I guess, because you'd have to admit that the things that are in front of you might not be what you initially anticipated them to be. And that means you actually have to make some really hard choices. You can't just say, oh, well, that's a little sus, but, it's none of my business. It's like, well, it kind of is, though. If you're utilizing a system that's hurting people, you need to think it kind of is your business. It kind of is. You're still involved with people that are doing horrific things. And you have the opportunity to turn a blind eye and just not think about it too much and just let the system take over and do what it wants to do. Or you could try to step in and change it. And you might not be able to change the whole system, but you can at least do something about the people who are closest to you. But yes, that's what my character is going through right now. But yeah, I don't subscribe to like the alignments. For anyone who's seen the chart, everything from like neutral good to neutral, and like you've got neutral evil and stuff. I don't use that system for all of my characters. In fact, most of the time I don't sit down and necessarily think what alignment my character is. But I think it's an interesting way to kind of analyze your character after the fact, especially in editing, and see where your character falls, because it can be a different way of looking at their actions and making sure that they are in alignment with where the character is in their journey. So I think it can be a useful tool. Don't think I would start out using that, but it's an interesting thing to use analyzing after the fact. I think I have a couple chaotic, lawful, good characters, and a lot more that go against the law system in place. Yeah. As is usual with dystopians. Yeah, especially in dystopians. There, yep, exactly. Especially in dystopians. Exactly. All right. So I think we are going to get ready for a 45-minute sprint. So I am going to get stuff up. Please remember to like and subscribe if you have this to the screen. And we're going to go ahead and do a 45-minute sprint. I will see people later. Sorry, I was so inside my scene, I totally forgot to turn off the timer. Sorry. I was very into my scene. I'm in an interrogation scene between a government official and my main character. I was very into it. Anyway, how'd y'all do? How'd you guys do? How's it going? We have a couple more people who have landed in chat. We've got Hella here and Megan. Megan looks to be working on getting to the midpoint of Return Upon the Tide novel. Awesome. Midpoint is an interesting point. I think around there you should be doing lots of try-fails. It's an interesting part of the book. Hella, I'm currently hopping around to different chapters of my work in progress, trying to find the inspiration to work on something. If you're having a hard time with the work in progress inspiration for it, you might want to pull back and see if you can like sketch out some outlining stuff or work on the character motivation. Chances are you'll find something interesting in there that needs to be worked on. So like if you're looking into your character, you could, if you drill down far enough, you can find, oh, well, this is one of their hangups for one of the things that's caused their life to fall apart horribly. Then you can say, what could I bring in that would engage this character into facing that? So, for example, if you have a character who's very argumentative and keeps pushing people away, if you keep drilling down and you find out the reason why they're so argumentative is because if they lose an argument, they feel like that makes them a bad person or that they're a weak person for not having strong arguments for some reason. That's a pride issue. And you can try to address that. Like what would push their pride over an edge? What is something you could do to force that? So that can create something to play with. Sometimes it works. It doesn't always work, but it's an idea. Let's see. Yeah, he was like, timer went off. Sorry. It's not a delay. I was just very lost in the sauce of my scene. Sorry about that. You're running out of ideas, getting inspired by music and other elements. Sometimes we just need that outside thing. That's a good thing. Yes, I was very in the scene. So yeah, not the midpoint yet, but getting hell of ideas. Yeah, good. The ideas will help, hopefully. You looked in your scene. I was very in the scene. I was very, very, very in the scene. For sure. Because I do like how I did the interrogation scene originally, and most of it's going to stay. I'm just fixing up and making it as tight as possible. Because the things that the government is going to kind of go against my main character, but not in the way they initially anticipated. So they tried to plan for this, but it didn't matter in the end. And the way in which they tried to plan to get around it won't actually work. So they're still going to be in a really bad situation. So the tension is really high because I just got to the point where they're pretty much dropping, look, we're in a bad situation as a government here. Like we have to answer to the higher level. And they've told us that you can't touch these things and you would already touch. So pretty much there's no way they can get out of this situation. They landed on a ship and touched things they weren't supposed to touch. So regardless of whether or not they were innocent, doesn't matter. The government's just going to come after them regardless because they've seen too much. So they're realizing that staying on the side of the law, this is the point where they realize that staying lawful good is not going to help them at all. They're going to have to go against the establishment. They won't have a choice. They either go against the establishment or the people they just rescued are going to die. So it's an intense scene. So I was very lost in sauce for sure. All right. So let's see. I think when it comes to like, we have a different day. Let's see. I'm not sure which day it is. I believe it is day 4 or 5. I think it's day 5. No, it's day 6. So day 6, I'll talk more about like character builds and stuff like that. But I do think it's interesting to see the shift in alignment for characters to go from one side to the other. I actually think it's more common. You guys can correct me in the comments. I might be wrong on this. I feel like it's more common for characters go from lawful good to switching into chaotic good or even just neutral good. I feel like the reverse doesn't usually happen. I don't think I can recall a story where a character went from chaotic good to lawful good. Again, correct me in the comments if you guys can think of a character off the top of your head that goes in that direction. But I feel like most characters, they start lawful and then they realize that the law is not in and of itself good. And so they end up going against it. And that's like most stories. I wonder if that's just more of an American story thing, though. I wonder, because I feel like it's the whole idea and concept behind a lot of anti-establishment. I know that exists everywhere to an extent, but I wonder if it's most common with American writing. And I wonder if it's more common to find characters that do go into lawful good. I don't know. I think that's a curious thing. I can't think of any characters that switch over into lawful good off the top of my head. Are there any? Maybe some really old characters. I feel like some of the older characters from my lit classes, old books, like Molly Flanders might be one of them. She starts out with a lot of like criminal activity, but the book kind of ends and she's kind of made something of herself and she has a legitimate business at the very end. So maybe that, but like that's really old. That's actually one of the first novels that was produced in England way back in the day. Maybe it happens sometimes with redemption arcs, but I can't think of it. Yeah, because I think the problem is most people acknowledge that a lot of laws are there for control and to stop chaos, but that doesn't necessarily mean the law itself is good. It just means the law is attempting to keep, not peace, but keep order. And I'm not someone who's anti-law, because I do think laws do serve a purpose in society. I think they are needed to an extent, but that doesn't mean the law itself is good. You still rely on the human beings within that system to do good things. And that therein lies the problem. But the law itself is not good. It's what the people do with it. At least that's always been my perspective. But I don't know. I feel like that might be a very American view of it. I can't think of any, but then again, I'm kind of new to the lawful, neutral, chaotic, good, evil arcs. Like, I knew about them, but I never used them before in my writing. Yeah, I haven't seriously used them. I think it's an interesting tool to look at, but I've never, like, seriously been like, this is my character's alignment, and I don't write it down or notate it anywhere. I just find it kind of interesting, especially because I feel like it's normal for the characters to change over time, which is maybe one of the reasons why I think, because I usually see that chart used for D&D, Dungeons and Dragons characters. But the problem with that is those characters tend to remain stagnant and stay within that alignment. And I feel like that's not how characters are supposed to work. I feel like there should be some kind of a change. Because actually, you know what? I just thought of this. Okay, this is older extended universe for Star Wars. So the newer stuff that Disney has done since Disney acquired it, Disney wrecked the extended universe. So this doesn't apply anymore. But back in the day, of the older variation of extended universe, Han Solo actually might be a case for switching over into lawful good, because he started out as chaotic good and he kind of worked outside of the law. He was a smuggler. When he marries Princess Leia in the old extended universe, he switches. It takes him a couple years. He fights it initially, but he switches over into being legit. He becomes I believe one of the military captains or something like that, and he becomes an official in a way, and he helps lead a lot of their troops for freeing a lot of the other planets from imperial rule, because even when they like win at the very end of Return of the Jedi, they still have to free all of the individual planets from their imperialistic leaders as well, which kind of stay on those planets. And they also, the biggest one is they have to free Coruscant. Um, and it's a huge deal. It takes them a really long time to do. I think it takes them another, like, what, 10 years or something in order to free Coruscant. But during that entire time, like, Han is no longer a smuggler in the normal sense of the word. He works for the Republic officially. He becomes an official of the Republic and works for them exclusively. He becomes an officer. So I wonder if that is a case of switching over into the lawful good, because it's lawful according to the New Republic. Maybe that qualifies. I don't know. Kind of an interesting one. But yeah, I can't think of anything. I feel like it's really, really rare, because in order for the law to be perceived as good, more often than not in these stories, the law has to be overthrown and replaced with a new one that really is for the people, which usually doesn't stay lawful for long before corruption finds it again, and the cycle repeats. But that early part of a revolution working and actually taking things back, during that portion, I feel like you will see characters go from chaotic good or neutral good and switching over into lawful good for a brief time. That sounds accurate to me. Yeah, probably. I think I'm right. I think I've got it, but I'm not positive. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. Anyway, I do think alignment should shift with your characters. I don't think they should be stagnant, which is probably one of the reasons why I've had a hard time with using things like alignments, because usually when people use them, the idea is that it's a stagnant alignment. Like, the character, they just are this way. The character they're just chaotic good, and that's just what they are like. But I feel like that's not actual human experience. Human beings grow and change over time, especially if something really huge happens to your characters. It depends on the personality and mentality of people, how they view or perceive the law, maybe. Yeah. And it does depend on the story as well. Like, maybe in like a romance book, for example, I feel like those alignments probably won't shift as much in a book like that. I mean, I guess it depends on what the conflict is, but I feel like in a romance, they probably will remain pretty stagnant. But I feel like a lot of books, most books, there will be some level of shift. Maybe not a ton. I don't think in a romance, for example, I don't think a character is likely to go from neutral good to chaotic evil. That's a massive, massive switch. And I don't think that would happen easily, but it's not impossible. Like, it could happen. That's a really intensive romance book you got there. But I don't think it's likely for that to occur. But going from chaotic good, for example, to more of a neutral good, I feel like that's a smaller change, and that might be more reasonable to happen to a romance. I feel like that's not as weird, but I could be wrong. Like, I don't know. I feel like the alignments should definitely change over the course of the book. Even if it's something like a romance or a simple story, I think there will be some level of shift at the very least for the main character. Especially because when you start out a book, even a romance, you start out with characters lacking something, or something horrible having gone wrong with the character's life. Like, usually multiple things. You usually want to have a handful of things that you're like, oh wow, this person really wrecked their life somehow. And the point is for that character to get to a place where they fix some of it. Maybe not all of it, but they're like on their way to fixing and repairing the damage. They've learned their lesson. They've gained something out of the book, the course of the book. and they're now moving on to a different place of their life. And that doesn't necessarily mean a happy ending. Sometimes it could mean, oh, I've really been looking for validation in all of my romantic relationships. I should be single for a while. Or, like, it can sometimes end in heartbreak initially, but that can still be a lesson learned for the character. It doesn't necessarily have to be a happy ending for a lesson to be learned. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents on the matter. I do believe we are going to go ahead and get ready for another sprint. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 45-minute timer, and we're going to go for another 45 minutes. And I will see you guys in a bit. Okay, I actually caught it this time. All right, and that is it. How did you guys do today? How do you feel you did? I'm really, really happy with my progress that I made. I think I did a really good job. Haley has left the chat. She's going off to bed. And I'm going to be heading out soon too for my 30-minute lunch break because I am very hungry. But yeah, I got a lot done. I'm actually in a scene. I've caught up to the place where I have the most correction. And that is, originally I was not going to have the main character's father join them for the last leg of the adventure because the father is very, very sick. He's terminally ill. But I've actually determined that he's going to. He's going to be very feisty and fiery. And so he is actually going to be joining the group. So illness be damned, he's going to be joining. So I actually have to completely change everything in these action scenes coming up because he's going to be joining in somewhat. So he also has to flee the colony alongside the main character, which makes more sense anyway, because otherwise, if he were to remain behind, the government could use him as leverage to get the main character to return to the colony. So because the father will actually be joining them, he can't be used as a hostage. So that actually makes more sense. So, but it does mean a lot of rewriting. So I'm in the middle of doing that. We're going to pause for a bit. And I'm going to close this down. Thank you guys so much. I will see you. If you are YouTube only, I will see you next, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow. Same time, same channel. But if you would like to keep going, we are going to keep going on Discord for another 2 hours. But we're going to have a little bit of a half-hour break first to eat, at least for me. So thank you guys so much for showing up. This has been really fun. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. And I will see you all in 30 minutes on Discord. So, yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much. Bye.